Born over a century before the Battle of Yavin, Anya Kuro was an enigmatic Jedi Master that remained something of a mystery even to her colleagues. In her early years as a Jedi, she was tasked with seeking out children who were strong in the Force. She would travel far and wide as a member of the Acquisition Division of the Jedi Order, with one of her earliest discoveries being the renowned Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi. Anya Kuro was a stern Jedi Master who would maintain an almost fanatical adherence to the Jedi Code. Uncomfortable with forming attachments to either people or property, Kuro would claim to have given up all possessions, even her own name, allowing others to simply call her the Dark Woman. Noted for her harsh training methods, which some considered to be disturbing if not outright abusive, Kuro would often be assigned what she would term difficult students by the decision of the Jedi Council, the most famous of whom was the failed Jedi Padawan turned Jedi killer Aurra Sing. Although she would spend many years away from the temple, Kuro would return to serve in the Clone Wars, beginning with the first battle of Geonosis. During this period, Aurra Sing would attempt to take revenge on her former mentor by setting a deadly trap on Devoron. Unfortunately for Sing, she would be thwarted by the young Jedi Master Aayla Secura. Following the war's end and the execution of Order 66, Anya Kuro would go into a self-imposed exile, staying hidden until just before the Battle of Yavin. Located by the Emperor's Hand Mara Jade, Darth Vader would travel to the planet Kafragan 5 to deal with Kuro. After a brief philosophical debate about extinction and the natural order of things, Vader would attack and Kuro would defend. After a brief but fierce battle, Kuro was defeated, but as Vader brought down his blade for the killing stroke, Kuro would transcend the physical plane as a Force spirit and profess that she believed that there was still good left in Vader. Just a few short years later, Kuro would be proven right. The man who would become Darth Kaidus was born to Han and Leia Organa Solo on Coruscant under the given name Jacen Solo. Jacen, along with his twin sister Jaina, inherited his father's piloting skill and his mother's Force sensitivity, resulting in his eventual training at the Jedi Praxium. Apprenticed alongside his younger brother Anakin to his uncle Luke Skywalker, Jacen would be noted as having a unique connection to the Force as compared to his two siblings. A philosopher who struggled with the idea of employing violence to fight violence, Solo entered a personal crisis with the outbreak of the Yuuzhan Vong War. He preferred to serve off the front lines, but felt obligated to volunteer for the strike team assembled to eliminate the Voxan Queen at Myker. There, Anakin Solo was killed, and Jacen Solo stepped up to lead the team, killing the Queen and ending the Voxan threat before he was captured by the Yuuzhan Vong. Solo spent nearly a year in captivity, during which he was tortured for weeks at a time. Solo struggled with his circumstances, and with the teaching of his captor and mentor, Vergere. He slipped to the dark side before returning and embracing the idea of responding to the universe with unconditional, all-encompassing love. He escaped Yuuzhan Vong custody with Vergere, a former Jedi of the Old Republic, and rejoined the war effort. In the final battle of the war, Solo stormed Supreme Overlord Chimera Jamane's citadel and defeated Onami, who was mentally controlling the Supreme Overlord. While Solo himself experienced a moment of unity with the Force, Jacen then took a 5-year sabbatical, traveling the galaxy as he learned and understood the mysteries of the Force using other Force-using orders of the galaxy. Learning at the feet of the Aang Ti, Baron Dosages, and many more, Solo would receive a dark vision towards the end of his journey of a masked Sith who would conquer the galaxy. Jaded by the Vong War and his travels, Jason returned to the galaxy at the start of the Dark Nest crisis. While Jason was instrumental in the early stages, he would also conceive a daughter with his old flame from the Yavin 4 Praxium, Tenel Ka Dejo, who was now the queen of the Hapes cluster. This daughter would be Alana Dejo Solo, but due to the nature of Happen politics, her parentage was hidden, even from everyone but her direct parents. While Alana herself was unaware of her father's identity until she was well into her childhood, in perhaps an event that foreshadowed what was to come, Jason saw to it personally that all who knew or learned of the secret of Alana's parentage were eliminated, with the sole exception being his cousin and informal apprentice Ben Skywalker, whom he chose instead to memory rub. As part of keeping the parentage of his daughter a secret, Jason instigated the Swarm War by manipulating his sister and the fellow survivors of the Micro mission into launching a surprise attack against the Chiss, an act for which Jaina would never truly forgive her brother for the rest of his life. In 40 ABY, a string of events orchestrated by the Sith Lady Lumaya would turn Jason to the dark side through the careful manipulation of the psychological trauma inflicted on him by the Yuuzhan Vong War. Jason would receive another vision of his dark man, though this time he foresaw his daughter, Alana, standing next to him as some sort of second in command. Believing that the only way to ensure the safety of his daughter was to embrace the dark side and change the future from its current course, he and Lumaya instigated the events that turned a regional crisis in the Corellia system into a full-blown galactic civil war, with Jason controlling the Alliance and Lumaya pulling the strings of the Confederacy. Things would come to a head roughly a year into the conflict, with Jason's murder of his aunt, Mara Jade Skywalker. Lumaya would take the blame for the killing, and would be hunted down and killed in cold blood by Grand Master Luke Skywalker in retribution for her perceived action. Granting himself the title of Darth Kaidus, Caedus would continue the war effort, committing several atrocities on a grand scale such as the burning of Kashyyyk, and on a personal level by brutally torturing Ben Skywalker in an almost successful attempt to turn him to the dark side. During the course of his reign, he would duel Grand Master Skywalker to a standstill and defeat Battlemaster Kyle Katarn. A few months after this battle, Caedus would be tracked down by his twin sister Jaina. The two would fight to a stalemate, with Caedus losing his arm and Jaina suffering severe head trauma. The two would meet again just a few short days later, and though the battle appeared to be at a stalemate again, Caedus did something peculiar. At the very last moment, he became Jason Solo once more, and instead of choosing to take his sister down with him, he expended the last seconds of his life warning Tenel Ka of the impending danger of an Imperial bioweapon, giving her the precious time needed to escape with their daughter Alana. In the end, what corrupted Jason Solo was the very thing that redeemed him. It was Solo's desire to protect the galaxy, and his increasing willingness to accept any cost in that cause that facilitated his fall to the Sith. And it was Solo's desire to protect his daughter that led him back to the light at the last possible moment. Hello YouTube, this is the Phoenix Exalt bringing you the next installment of my Versus series. For this analysis, I will be using Anya Kuro during the time frame of her duel with Darth Vader, and Darth Kaidus from the time frame of Legacy of the Force, specifically just before his duel with Jaina on the asteroid Nickel 1, where he lost one of his arms. I will be pulling from Legends continuity, along with any canon materials that do not directly interfere with previously made Legends materials, though in this case that won't be that hard. Due to the fact that the Disney Story Group is going in a direction that is neither original nor creative, I will not be using canon as the main point of Star Wars media for my videos. As always, I own none of the characters, art, music, or other media depicted in this video, and all rights to them go to the respective companies. With that out of the way, I present to you Anya Kuro versus Darth Kaidus. These two legendary combatants met on the battlefield. Who would be the victor? Anya Kuro was a human woman whose exact age remains uncertain, but some inferences can be made to guess her age. It is known that Ki-Adi-Mundi was born approximately 92 years before the Battle of Yavin. It is also known that Mundi was found and brought to the Jedi Temple at the age of 4 by Anya Kuro herself. By the time of her duel with Darth Vader, even a conservative estimate of her age would put her at over 110 years old. The light side of the Force is known to sustain its users well into old age, but the level at which Kuro retained her physical fitness is truly exceptional. Kuro has sustained blade locks against Darth Vader and Asherad Het. She has sustained a blaster bolt to the shoulder, a direct punch from one of Vader's fists, along with surviving close proximity to an explosion that caused large amounts of rubble to nearly bury her alive. Most notably, all of the aforementioned feats came during the time span of her old age. While she was, without a shadow of a doubt, a woman who had lived far past her physical prime, Anya Kuro's feats of strength, speed, and durability, even in her diminished state, were truly commendable. Darth Kaidus was a 32-year-old human male who stood at roughly 5 foot 9 inches in height at the time of his death. He was an above-average specimen in terms of strength, speed, reflexes, and agility, but it would be his physical resilience where he would be truly exceptional. While being subjected to a year of torture by the Yuuzhan Vong, Caedus developed mental techniques that allowed him to virtually ignore any physical pain. While this did not grant him the complete immunity shown by the likes of Darth Zion, it did allow him to shrug off otherwise debilitating and even potentially lethal injuries. During his final battle with Jaina, Caedus suffered multiple stabbing wounds from a lightsaber, one of which pierced him through the gut. Intense burns caused by a nearby incinerator, and at least a dozen puncture wounds from used syringes and the shattering of his left leg. Despite all of those injuries, he still got back up and continued fighting. It would take Jaina cutting him in half at the heart for him to finally die, and even then, the novel makes note that he did not die until her blade met his heart. Despite this resiliency, Caedus was suffering from some minor dark side degradation, sporting the yellow eyes and pale skin common to most Sith Lords, though this degradation does not appear to have influenced his capabilities in any meaningful way. While it may be possible to outclass Caedus in various categories, he would not go down without a fight. It was a death blow or nothing. This conclusion is perhaps one of the easiest to call. While the fact that Anya Kuro is still walking around, let alone still capable of fighting someone like Vader, at her advanced age, is beyond incredible. However, she is no match for a combatant nearly a third her age in a physical contest, and Caedus possesses more than enough resilience and strength to win in a physical contest between the two. Therefore, it will come as no surprise that Darth Kaidus will be given the edge in physical abilities. Although she was an obscure master who spent most of her time on the galaxy's fringe, Anya Kuro was a respected and valued instructor at the Jedi Temple for many years. During her time at the temple, It was said that her students could expect no fewer than one lightsaber duel with her per week. It was also known that while her students were the most battered at the temple, they were also the best and the most devoted lightsaber combatants. The notable Jedi killer Aurra Sing provided testament to the standard of skill Kuro demanded. Like Dooku during his time as a Jedi, Anya Kuro was a stern mentor and was not above relying on fear and intimidation to truly test her students. Words were weapons in Kuro's opinion, and she would use them to great effect to test her students' strength of will. This practice was eerily similar to the practice of Dun Mok, a form of Sith psychological warfare. While Kuro shared many traits with the Dark Lords of the Sith in terms of teaching methods, this actually made her a more effective teacher. Darth Plagueis would note that Sith training often produced more capable individuals as Sith apprentices were forced to truly sink or swim, as the price of failure was death. Jedi apprentices could afford to coast on mediocre skill, especially if they were paired with a master too blinded by compassion to truly test their students. Anya Kuro understood this, and even if she believed the Sith to be truly evil, Kuro clearly took some inspiration from their training methods. Her methods were so brutal that when her then Padawan Aurra Sing suddenly disappeared, several members of the Jedi Council seriously considered the idea that Kuro had killed Sing in a sparring match taken too far. While this rumor was completely false, and was obviously put to rest when Sing reappeared as a bounty hunter, the mere fact that Jedi Council members entertained this idea speaks to her reputation of brutality and her unforgiving nature. Unsurprisingly, for someone with her reputation, Kuro was a master of lightsaber combat. Due to her frequent use of acrobatics in the duels she's been featured in, she is thought to be a master of Form 4, Ataru. Ataru focused on incorporating the whole body as a weapon, incorporating every form of physical strike imaginable into a seemingly wild but disciplined blade work. The form was best used by Jedi who were sufficiently proficient in the Force that they were able to augment their physical capabilities to beyond superhuman levels. Though, because of this, Ataru was an exhaustive practice that was best used in short bursts to overwhelm an opponent. Anya Kuro's skill was such that she was able to overcome the youthful Asherat Het, and though it would be many years before he became the fearsome Darth Krayt, Het was no mere weakling at the time, and had spent many years training under his father, the famed Jedi Knight, Sharad Het, whose skills were regarded highly by Master Yoda himself. Perhaps most famously of all, Anya Kuro fought Darth Vader in single combat, and while she would fall that day, she gave him a much better fight than most Jedi half her age or even younger. Kuro's skill was such that she could legitimately disarm Vader of his lightsaber, an extremely rare occurrence as only a handful of combatants could claim to have disarmed Vader, though skill alone in single combat. Overall, Anya Kuro was a deceptive and extremely dangerous combatant, and it's fair to say that any combatant that could give Darth Vader a serious challenge was a match for almost anyone in the galaxy. Jacen Solo had a natural talent for lightsaber dueling, and was considered one of the best duelists in the Praxium shortly after constructing his lightsaber. By the time he was a Sith Lord, he was able to engage multiple Jedi Knights at a time and cut swaths through ordinary troopers. However, one of the problems when attempting to break down the skill set of Darth Kaidus is that the information given on him is spare, and unlike his twin sister Jaina, his skill set is often overestimated by both himself and others. Caedus often considered himself the best lightsaber combatant around, with the possible exception of Luke, which, considering even Lumaya doubted this assessment, it can easily be discounted as typical Sith arrogance. During his career, Darth Kaidus would face exactly 4 combatants in 5 separate engagements that posed any real threat to him. These being Luke Skywalker, Mara Jade, Kyle Katarn, and Jaina Solo twice. Of these 5 engagements, 1 was inconclusive, he lost 1, drew 1, and won 2, and his victories were due to a desperation tactic that utilized his power in the Force. A combat record such as this may seem to suggest that Caedus is a rather poor duelist all around, though I do not necessarily believe this to be the case. Based off of Caedus's observed duels, we can see that he did not conform to any particular style, and rather operated as a general-purpose combatant that did not specialize in any one area. By the time of Caedus's serious training at Yavin 4, we know that the classical forms of lightsaber combat had been discovered, and therefore it would be likely that a young Jacen Solo studied one of these 7 forms. Based on his description of being a general-purpose combatant, along with his integration of Force abilities, it is my belief that he studied Form 6, Nyman. Known as the Moderation form, Nyman was known as the most balanced and versatile form of lightsaber combat. True Nyman specialists were known to often incorporate a secondary style into their sequences, and it is my belief that this secondary form was Ataru, the most elaborate and acrobatic form of combat. A hybridization of these 2 forms would temper the exaggerated nature of Ataru, along with adding ferocity to Nyman that would be previously lacking. Caedus would showcase his tempered style by using gymnastics to achieve direct blade work, while keeping his touch delicate and body loose. Caedus has shown a willingness to use the lightsaber to the fullest extent of its ability, utilizing thrusts, slashes with the tip and the blade, along with parries and blade binding. Though he chose to wield a standard lightsaber, Caedus showcased that he was familiar, if not a master of alternative weapon sets, carrying blasters, vibroblades, and projectile launchers on his person at all times. It is theorized by Evan Nova 95 that Caedus was a master of Diplomat's Nyman, a lesser form of Nyman typically reserved for those that had either no fondness or time for lightsaber dueling. This is an assessment that I have mixed feelings over. On the one hand, the Jacen Solo that activates his lightsaber first and charges into battle is not exactly the image of someone who practices Diplomat's Nyman. Though, on the other hand, it is undeniable that Caedus focused much more on his Force abilities, and is rarely seen training with his lightsaber after his fall to the dark side. My ultimate conclusion is that during his time as Jacen Solo, he was an up-and-coming Battlemaster Nyman specialist, training to carve his way through scores of enemies, be they stormtroopers or Yuuzhan Vong warriors. However, as his 5-year sojourn progressed, he became engrossed in his studies of the Force, and as a Sith Lord, even more so. This caused his skills to slowly fade as time went on, and so while it was likely true that at one time Jacen Solo was one of the top lightsaber duelists in the New Jedi Order, Darth Kaidus would peak around the tier 1.5 range of duelists, being able to compete with, but not overcome, Luke Skywalker, Mara Jade, and Jaina Solo, and being able to just hold off Kyle Katarn and his backup team of Jedi. Darth Kaidus is therefore an extremely dangerous combatant that should be taken as a serious threat, though he is far from invincible when it comes to lightsaber combat alone. This one is going to be a little harder to call. On the one hand, Kuro is a dedicated lightsaber combatant, and since Caedus isn't, one might think to give her the edge based on that information alone. However, in this case, it is not so simple. Caedus has let his skills fade as he became fascinated with his more esoteric Force abilities. But being able to go toe-to-toe with a bloodlusted Grandmaster Luke Skywalker and surviving to tell about it is no mean feat. Additionally, it should be noted that while he never properly defeated his sister Jaina, He did start off both of their duels without the use of both arms, and with injuries sustained prior to their engagement, and yet he still managed to draw Jaina in his first duel, and arguably drew the second one as well if you take Jaina's prediction of a final lethal counterstrike to be accurate. For these two combatants, their most impressive feats were the combatants they almost managed to beat. Kuro almost kills Vader, and Jason almost overcomes Jaina solo and gives Luke a run for his money. Caedus has the edge here in the sense that Grandmaster Luke is a more impressive combatant than Darth Vader, but I believe that it will ultimately come down to who has the better skill set. Neither combatant has a martial skill that is a trump card, and while Caedus had some martial training from his 5-year sojourn, it was nothing an experienced combatant couldn't handle, as evidenced by Mara Jade, Kyle Katarn, Jaina Solo, and Luke Skywalker. Therefore, it will all come down to can Caedus defend against Kuro long enough for her old age to catch up to her? The short answer in my view is yes. Kuro is by no means a spring chicken, and on top of that her saber skills are not on the level of Kyle Katarn or Luke Skywalker. Therefore, while Caedus may not be able to directly overcome Kuro, he wouldn't necessarily need to, and even if he could, he would have to simply lie in wait as Kuro exhausted herself upon his defenses. Darth Kaidus gets the edge in martial arts and lightsaber dueling. Being such an obscure master, little is known about where or how Anya Kuro acquired the knowledge of all of her abilities. What is known, however, is that there are precious few in the galaxy who could claim to come close in terms of variety. While several Jedi Council members disapproved of her and her methods, Kuro was renowned for her deep connection to the light side of the Force. Proficient in the arts of stealth and infiltration, Anya Kuro was easily one of the best field operatives at the Order's disposal. According to the Clone Wars campaign book, she had the ability of Force Cloak, a rare ability in which a Force user bends light around them, causing them for all intents and purposes to become invisible to the naked eye. More impressive, however, was Kuro's ability to manipulate reality. The Force is the binding agent of the universe. It is contained within all living things, and not living. Kuro took this literally. Molding the Force present everywhere, she was able to phase through solid objects as if they weren't there at all, and had the ability to teleport. These skills give her some commonality with the Old Republic Sith Lord Darth Kaidus, who would use such abilities to evade and subdue his enemies without even drawing his weapon. The limitations of these abilities, if indeed there are any, are unknown, but their rarity speak to their advanced nature, and the likelihood that a being had to have both considerable power and the right state of mind to utilize them. While not shown doing so, Kuro has been credited with the ability to cast Force illusions, and while not deadly in nature, an illusion coupled with invisibility come with obvious benefits. Kuro was known to have the ability to receive prophetic dreams and visions, though it is unknown if these were voluntary or involuntary. The Clone Wars campaign guide also credits her with technometry, a power similar to Mechaduru. Technometry allows the user to sense the inner workings of machinery and droids, with the most powerful adepts being able to control them. Kuro possessed a notable talent with the healing arts, and while it is more difficult to heal oneself rather than another, upon suffering a blaster bolt to the chest from friendly fire, she was able to heal the injury almost instantly. Along with the Jedi such as Thom and Kakruk, Anya Kuro was able to enter a trance that slowed bodily functions to the point of death. While in this state, she appeared as dead on medical scanners, along with being undetectable in the Force. While not shown using telekinesis in battle, Anya Kuro has been credited with the power, and based on her other showings, it is an easy assumption that utilizing the abilities in combat is well within the scope of her powers. Kuro has been shown defending against telekinesis utilized by Darth Vader, so it is safe to say that she is capable, but the exact magnitude of her abilities is unknown. However, when on the counteroffensive against Vader, Anya Kuro used another obscure ability, Plant Surge, more formally referred to as Consitor Sato. This power was closely aligned with the light side, and allowed the wielder to compel plant life to promote spontaneous growth or movement. Despite its alignment with the light side of the Force, the power was extremely rare and was usually mastered by Ithorian nature priests rather than actual Jedi. Kuro used this power to bind Vader's limbs and neck, leaving him open to a killing blow, which he only narrowly avoided. Finally, Anya Kuro was one of the few Jedi of her time with the ability to transcend the physical plane as a Force spirit, joining the esteemed Jedi Masters Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. If I had to guess a reason for Anya Kuro's unique relationship with the Force, I would surmise that beings like her were the light side answer to Sith sorcery. Her ability to bend reality around her is similar to the likes of Darth Zana, with abilities that are just as powerful, but far less destructive and non-lethal in nature. The magical spells of the dark side are described as a manifestation of the Force, a being either possesses or not. Sorcerers are born, not made, and if Kuro was indeed a practitioner of light side Force magic, it would explain why her abilities were so rarely seen even amongst the most powerful of the Jedi. Jacen Solo, and by extent Darth Kaidus, was one of the most powerful Force users to ever live. He was able to develop a rudimentary telepathy as an unborn child, and was soon able to communicate silently with his twin sister Jaina as a toddler. As a 2-year-old, Jacen was able to communicate with all varieties of creatures through the usage of the Force, along with using telekinesis to acquire items from shelves. By age 5, he had mastered the Beast Trick ability, and was said to be able to coax the young of any animal in the galaxy into purring in his hand. While just 5 years old, his telekinesis was shown to be extremely advanced, rubbing air molecules together extremely quickly to create light, and slowing water molecules to create ice. As an adult, all of his powers were taken to the next level. His telepathy advanced to the point that Caedus could use the Force to project a sensation of dread to others, driving them away, and exerting a powerful mind trick that could compel even a talented Jedi. He was also able to fool the perceptions of Jedi, and project a false Force presence, even making himself feel like multiple individuals. His telekinesis allowed him to lift and throw heavy objects, and his active Force barrier could resist all those who tested it, with the sole exception of Luke Skywalker, who could ragdoll him as easily as he could anyone else. During the first Battle of Dueling, Solo was able to link himself mentally with his siblings, sharing perceptions and thoughts through the Force in order to fight with superior coordination. The meld went beyond the heightened bonding he had sometimes employed with Jaina in combat situations, to the point where their minds seemed to work as one. During the Micro mission, the strike team expanded on this concept, with Solo and his great emphatic powers serving as the focus for a 17 Jedi battle meld. The battle meld worked much the same way as the meld at Dueling, allowing the Jedi to share thoughts. Under Solo's control, they became nearly one mind. He was at times liable to lose track of his own body, submerged in the thoughts of the others. Through the bond, he could shift the feelings of some Jedi to others, drawing the proper emotion from one Jedi to reinforce others. He also had a natural talent with those Force skills involved in the manipulation of the body. Notable for a Sith Lord, Caedus was also talented in healing, able to skillfully put others into healing trances, among other healing powers. He could exercise precise control over his own bodily functions, manipulating blood flow and organ performance in order to modify his physical condition and adapt to his environment or wounds. Caedus could also influence others, putting them to sleep or lending them strength. Additionally, Caedus possessed a mastery of foresight, which made it impossible for an opponent to camouflage themselves from him. At some point, Caedus also mastered Tutaminis, being able to absorb blaster bolts and even turbo lasers. Caedus had access to battle meditation, battle melds, battle coordination, with a Sith version of battle meditation that is greater in power, using the Force to erase memories, otherwise known as a memory rub, astral projection, pain resistance, Mekuduru, the Aing Force trance ability, mind walking, which allowed him to become one with the Force while still alive and return to the land of the living, voice projection. From the Falanasi, he became an adept of the White Current, which allowed him to create illusions much more powerful than the standard that were much harder, if not impossible, to dispel as compared to normal illusions. He could make himself invisible to the naked eye. He was a master of Shatterpoint. He was capable of shutting down in the Force to become undetectable to other Force wielders. He mastered the Sever Force ability on the offensive. His Force Lightning could instantly kill one or multiple targets if he so chose, while on the Keldor homeworld of Doran, Caedus would study under the Baron Dosages, learning the Hassett Durer technique, known as Lightning Rod, as if performed during a storm incorrectly, the user would be repeatedly struck by lightning and killed. He would also learn the Anya Seth technique, translated to Dead Brain. The technique provided an immunity to mental intrusion, along with an ability to appear dead on brain scanners. On Nam Chorus, he learned Menotherapy, which allowed him to not simply erase memories, but to physically separate them along with personality traits from a target's mind and either take them into himself or release them into the Force. Finally, we come down to the two most misunderstood powers in his arsenal, or more accurately, one for the reasons which will be explained later. First up is the Aing flow walking technique that allowed him to walk into the past or future at will. However, this did not translate into invincibility. Caedus himself admits that the only thing that one has the power to change when flow walking is memories. As he explained with the death of his brother Anakin, if he went back in time and saved him, all those in the present day would remember Anakin being saved. However, he would still be dead just the same, because the past and the future cannot be changed by the technique, only memories. The second power is Jacen's oneness with the Force. Unlike the similar descriptions given to the power employed by Luke and Ben Skywalker, Jacen achieved a oneness with the Force unlike anything that had come before or after. If what Luke Skywalker achieved was the Star Wars answer to the Avatar state, what Jacen achieved was the Star Wars answer to Aang merging with the Ocean Spirit. Tion Solsar described him as briefly transformed into the most powerful manifestation of the Force on record. Such a power was not without a cost, as Jacen Solo was said to have grown in size and aged 5 years in an instant. Additionally, Jacen himself has stated that he likely would never achieve such a state again, and after his fall to the dark side, this assumption likely became fact. Due to those factors, I will be discounting Jacen's oneness with the Force from availability of use, along with his flow walking technique, though all his other abilities will be available for his usage. This is an odd verdict, as neither combatant is truly ahead of the other, as they branched off into entirely separate areas of the Force. One could argue that Kuro teleporting and phasing through walls gives her the edge, though Caedus turning invisible and being able to use Force Sight to keep track of her negates that. Caedus' illusions might help, but Kuro could likely overcome them through sheer force of will. In terms of raw power, Caedus definitely has the upper edge. But it's not as though Kuro can't compete. In most other regards, they are roughly equal, but when it comes to their esoteric abilities and their relative power, Kuro will ultimately come up short. For all her tricks, Caedus is not helpless, and if Vader could deal with him despite his limited number of abilities, Caedus with more power and more tricks should not have the same amount of trouble. So while it is incredibly close, I feel comfortable in giving Darth Kaidus the very, very slight edge in force abilities. Anya Kuro wielded a standard Jedi lightsaber, likely powered by a purple Adegan crystal. This weapon contained no special benefits other than familiarity with her own handiwork, and neither did her fairly standard clothing. Darth Kaidus wore what even his enemies would call a stylish black outfit, and while there were no benefits to the outfit, it was the weapons hiding underneath that set him apart from his compatriots. Aside from his standard lightsaber powered by a red synthetic crystal, Caedus had access to a blaster, vibroblade, and poison darts mounted to a wrist projectile launcher. As noted by Caedus, the poison was so toxic that not even a Jedi healing trance could react quick enough to save the victim, which was of course how he killed Mara Jade. The verdict of course will not take any time at all, since Caedus' wide range of weapons clearly give him an advantage. Darth Kaidus gets the edge in weaponry and equipment. And now, the verdict. For this fight, let's say it takes place in Bast Castle on Vizhun, with multiple loose objects of various sizes for the combatants to use. Additionally, let us assume that for the purpose of this fight, neither combatant recognizes the other, because one or both combatants recognizing each other would cause an uneven playing field. Additionally, neither combatant will have time to prepare for the battle, and the fight will start with both combatants in full view of each other. As a final tally for this matchup, I see the victor winning 6 times out of 10. This will be a description of one majority victory. Let us begin. The early fight would be Kuro's game the whole way through. As a very old practitioner of Ataru, stamina will not be on her side, and therefore she will be at her strongest this early in the fight. Her aggressive fighting stance has the possibility to take Caedus off guard, and if she combines it with her unique abilities in the early fight and rushes Caedus, she likely would come out on top. Unfortunately for Kuro, she has never been depicted rushing someone with her abilities and sabers so early, and even against Darth Vader, she tended to reserve her abilities until later in the fight. Caedus will likely be on the defensive this early. While he will not shy away from a counterattack, he will typically make a more defensive stance against an aggressive fighter, at least for the early fight. However, due to Kuro's ability to take down Caedus this early, she will be giving 2 possible victories for an early fight. The mid-fight will favor neither combatant, as they both will have chances to flex their respective skill sets. Kuro's strong performance in the early fight will slightly sabotage her in the mid-fight, as she will have to put Caedus on edge. One of his biggest weaknesses is arrogance, but Caedus has shown that an aggressive opponent breeds caution within him and makes him use more force abilities along with a defensive mindset to ensure that there will be no surprise attacks. It is also at this point that they will both begin to employ their esoteric force abilities. Kuro will start phasing through walls and teleporting around the battlefield. Caedus will begin anticipating the movements with his techniques learned from the Ang-Ti, along with performing illusions where he could. It is at this time that Caedus will also begin to employ Shatterpoint, looking for the fatal flaw in Kuro's technique, and while it is possible that her Shatterpoint would not be exploitable, given that she was a model Jedi, I doubt that her Shatterpoint would be character related, and more than likely it would relate to something within her fighting style. Additionally, it is consistent across Caedus' engagements that it is the mid-fight where he will employ his additional weapons, and it is possible that he may also be able to surprise Kuro with either his poison darts or his blaster. Since both combatants have abilities that could lead them to a possible victory, and considering that they will both be employing them around roughly the same time, each combatant will be awarded 2 possible victories for the mid-fight. The late fight will more than likely be a one-sided engagement between the 2 combatants. At this point, Caedus will be fighting on the same level as he was against Grandmaster Luke, and Kuro will be throwing everything she has into the fight, much the same way she did with Vader. Unfortunately for Kuro, it is also the late fight where every disadvantage she has in the matchup will catch up to her. Caedus will be tanking hits better, he will not be tiring as Kuro will start to, and by the late fight, Caedus will have her shatter point. This is not to say that Kuro could not flee the battlefield if she wanted to. Her speed coupled with her ability to teleport would easily allow her to flee from Caedus should she decide to do so. As to whether or not she would is impossible to predict, as it relies entirely on when she realizes she can no longer hope to overcome her opponent, and if at that point she has the time and stamina to flee. In either case, all that is left is how Caedus would end the fight if she chose not to flee. It could be a flash of Force lightning catching her unawares, but perhaps more likely it would be roughly the same as how her fight with Vader ended, a massive Force wave that pummels her into submission. Due to these factors, Caedus will be awarded the remaining 4 points for the late fight. And thus, I declare Darth Kaidus the victor. Thank you all for waiting such a long time for the 6th episode of the 2nd season of the Versus series, and doubly thank you for watching all the way to here. As for my explanation, I knew that Caedus could handle Kuro in terms of a straight martial contest. As for all Kuro's skill, she was no Kyle Katarn or Luke Skywalker. Additionally, it was clear that in both the physical and weapons categories, the Kuro was outclassed and outmatched, and so this matchup came down to whether Caedus could deal with Kuro's unique Force abilities. The answer I arrived to at the end of the day was that Caedus' own unique abilities have proven that he will be able to predict the unexpected and react accordingly. Caedus' shatter point was simply the nail in the coffin, as he went from simply being able to deal with Kuro's abilities to being able to nearly instantly recognize her critical weaknesses, along with how to exploit them. So despite just how close this matchup is, the answer was clear to me. Darth Kaidus is victorious. Moving on to channel announcements. While I cannot say when episode 7 will be released, I will aim to have much less of a dry streak on this channel and supplement the Versus series with other content. Additionally, if you missed the channel announcement a week or so ago, I have created a Twitch channel for the purposes of having a more interactive method, as the YouTube comment system is not ideal for fan interaction. And so I will be streaming a large variety of content that both is and is not related to Star Wars, along with perhaps streaming the making of Versus series episodes. I don't know. As for now, that is all I have for announcements, and I wish you all the best, as your support means a very great deal to me. This is the Phoenix Exalt, signing out. Stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Always.